Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. This is now part 2 of my best ESC for microcrawlers videos, and in this video I will test a bunch of different small brushed ESCs and show you some ESCs with absolutely awesome performance, which most of you probably didn't know before. In part 1 I talked about the problems all those micros do have. Poor electronics mainly, especially poor bad low speed modulation, and noisy and annoying sound emitted by ESC and motors of those trucks, and that's caused by low PWM frequency settings. Low speed performance and modulations goes from okay, so in the Mini C 4x4 and maybe also in the SCX24 to so-so in most trucks to really bad, for example in the Panda Hobby Tetra K1, this one, or in the SG1802 on the left side here in parts. Some of those trucks, and here especially the raw copy Katana, but also the awesome Atlas 6x6, they are really noisy, unfortunately. And in the previous video I tested the amp draw of 4 example trucks, the RC 4-wheel drive 1 to 18th Defender, the SCX24, the Panda Hobby Tetra K1, and the Hobby Plus CR rating Kratos, this one, to check how big the amp rating of an ESC has to be suitable to be used in all those micros. And I really heavily tortured the trucks. Check the video. And the RC 4-wheel drive Defender only drew far less than 2 amps maximum. The SCX24 a little bit more than 4 amps, this guy, and the Kratos 5 amps, a little bit more, and only the Panda Hobby Tetra drew significantly more ampere, about 8 amps maximum in this truck, but it also does have a stronger, larger motor. But so a 10 amp ESC will be suitable for all those trucks here, for all those micro trucks, and for most of them even a 5 or 6 ampere ESC will be good if you wouldn't torture your trucks too heavily. And I will now test all those ESCs here, and as a reference I will take the large and awesome Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 set to 100% drag brake and 16 kHz PWM frequency. And those ESCs are a red and a blue one of those super cheap China ESCs every one of us knows. I should also have a yellow one somewhere around. Cannot find it actually. Don't know in which car it sits as motor ESC or winch ESC. And then I will test a Dumbo RC ESC and an Orlandoo ESC. Where is it? Here it is, without wires. Have to solder wires to the ESC, removed them somewhere. And then I will test the Turbo Racing, which one is it? This one. The Turbo Racing TP60025 and the Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 and an AS12-6RW by Modellbauregler DE and an AS12-15RW BEC, also from Modellbauregler DE, Modellbauregler DE. And I will explain and describe all those ESCs in more detail after the tests. And I will make all those drive tests simply on the bench here now to check the noise emission of those ESCs in the trucks, with those ESCs, and to check the low speed behavior and the modulation. And I will test each ESC of those in 2 chassis. First in this SCX24 deadbolt chassis, because most of you probably are mainly interested in the SCX24, but it's upgraded, it's equipped with an EMAX servo and upgrade shocks and RC 4-wheel drive steelies and Mickey Thompson Claw tires, and I will test all ESCs in this CR18 frame, Hobby Plus CR18, which is from the builder's kit. I uploaded a video recently about this Hobby Plus CR18 kit version. And therefore, for those tests, of course, I will need a lot more room on my bench here. So all those trucks here will have to go. But first, before the ESC tests, I will make a very short test run with those trucks here on the bench to demonstrate the noise emitted by those trucks and by the different models of those trucks, and to demonstrate the low speed modulation of each model. So let's start cleaning the bench now by running each of those trucks quickly here. So let's start with the cheapest one, the SG1802. There is meanwhile also a 01 with cheap. You get this truck for only about 50 bucks actually, even in European warehouse of Banggood. And it's a totally underestimated truck in my opinion. You see, I cannot really show it to you anymore because mine is in build stage, but it has really poor electronics. I forgot to mention in the Ampere video, it does also have 3 speeds, but it's very noisy and has super poor low speed performance. On stage 1 it's super weak. Check this short part of the review video now. That's not only maximum speed, that's also power, so it's extremely weak in the lowest setting. Stage 1, you see it's not able to climb anymore. On stage 3 it will easily be able to climb, but unfortunately low speed control is not very good. So for sure not a truck you will drive stock, but for your kids why not? But otherwise, if you want to build, it has hex hardware, it has a real 3-wire servo, and it has real beadlock wheels, and tires are not that bad. So I will keep those tires, and mine will become a Ford Bronco soon. I should finish this build. If you're searching for something to tinker and do not want to use the stock electronics anyway, that's for 50 bucks. That's a recommendation. SG1802 gone. And now to the small 1/24 RGT crawlers. Both of mine do have the large front motor, and with both of those trucks, with all those 1/24 RGTs, this Turbo Racing or Hobby Porter, Hobby Plus receiver will work. So if you want to upgrade those trucks, you do not have to buy a new radio. You simply can use and buy this cheap waterproof 4-channel receiver. The radio does even have a 3rd channel, what will work then, and you can upgrade your truck and use the stock radio. And they have the normal problem. Check this out. Very noisy and very poor low speed performance. So a lot of noise before it starts, then it starts abruptly, and if it has to go over a step, you see I give more. I'm nearly on full throttle already. So you have the old problem. Check this out. Before it starts, noisy, and it starts abruptly. So I'm nearly already on half throttle, and now it starts, and now over a step, more. I'm nearly on full throttle now. Check this out. So that's the old problem. RGT 1/24 gone. They are the same. And now let's come to the CR24s or maybe whatever, the small Hobby Plus trucks. They are about the same price class and the same size as the RGT24s. They have a smaller motor in central position, but I like those more. They have really nice beadlock wheels. You see, I did already tinker with my nearly 2-year-old one, and they are really nice little trucks, but they have the same problem as the RGT, but not as bad. So you see the noise, but it starts earlier as the RGT, and also the climbing behavior is nicer. So I really like those tiny trucks. Of course, they have small tires and low speed modulation is not really good, but for the price you get them sometimes already for less than 60 bucks, 60 euros, and they also work. Their radio works with this Turbo Racing Hobby Porter Hobby Plus receiver, and you see my old one. I really like to I should finish this, still didn't finish the body, but super nice for cheap tinkering around and making a nice truck. One day I will finish it, body, lights, interior. And if you wonder why I do have such a lot of those small RGT and Hobby Plus trucks and keep them stock like this one, that's because they do have exactly the same wheelbase as the Mini C 4x4, and there are bodies available now for the Mini C 4x4. This Defender body, the Jeep body, and the G500 body, and they fit perfectly to those Jeep trucks. And one day I will have a 1/24 Defender more, a Jeep, and a Mercedes G500, and do not have to buy a 200 euro or 250 euro Mini C for this. So CR24 highly recommended for 60 euros. It's less than half of the price of an XL X24, but of course you cannot compare those. Tiny tires, large tires, that's a scale truck, that's for crawling, but I really do like them. CR24 and maybe AMX Rock 24 gone. CR18, that's the old version with the small but torque motor. The stock radio will also work with this receiver. Low speed modulation not that bad. You hear the noise in reverse direction. This was bad now, but far better than in the RGTs. So that's quite okay. Why it jumps sometimes backwards, I don't know. Okay, not very good. Okay, but noisy. CR18 gone. CR18 Kratos with the larger motor. Stock radio, of course, also works with this Turbo Racing receiver. You hear noisy. Low speed modulation is not that bad. I would say that's quite okay. But if you saw my review video, center of gravity is not that good. CR18 Kratos gone. Now to the absolutely awesome Rock Hobby Katana with the beautiful LC80 hardbody radio. Stock radio also does work with this Turbo Racing receiver, and you hear the noise, the loudest of all, I guess. Low speed control wouldn't be that bad, maybe similar to the Kratos, maybe a little bit worse, but extremely loud. Katana gone. And now to the absolutely awesome ECRC Patrion or Patrion. Mine is already in modification. Same awesome hardbody as the Rock Hobby Katana, but the Katana is 50% more expensive than the Patrion. You see no electronics inside. Electronics are super weak or bad. very short part of the review video I made where you can see this. Try to climb as slow as possible. Not super good, so electronics bad if you want to upgrade anyway. Super cool truck, awesome body, but the turbo racing receiver will not work with the stock radio. Patrion gone. And now to one of my absolute favorites, the Atlas 6x6 FMS or Rock Copy or whatever. I really love this truck. Probably you saw my modifications video with the Atlas 6x6, the Turbo Racing or Hobby Plus or Hobby Porter. This receiver will work, and you hear it's quite noisy, but low speed modulation is not that bad. Check this out. So in my opinion it's the best so far. Maybe you remember how far I had to pull the trigger in the RGTs, and it can climb. So the Atlas 6x6, no matter if in red or in blue, is an absolutely awesome crawler, and it's way cheaper than the Rock Hobby Katana, so I only can recommend, highly recommend this truck. It's a little bit noisy, but buy this receiver and you will be able to use the stock radio and buy a good ESC. Atlas 6x6 gone. And now to the Panda Hobby Tetra K1. 3 speed settings. Now I'm on the lowest, on gear 1, so the slowest speed, where it should have the best low speed capability, modulation. And check this out. How far I have to pull the trigger. Annoying noise. And still, even on slowest speed, it absolutely, I'm nearly on full throttle. That's absolutely horrible, and it's super loud too, and super weak on gear 1. And now I change to the highest gear, gear 3. Still super noisy, but it starts earlier, so those gears won't help you, but it's nearly impossible to go slowly with this truck. Super strong, but super bad electronics. Panda Hobby Tetra K1 gone. And now to the SCX24. This one is absolutely stock. I'm now on the slowest of the 3 speeds. You hear the annoying noise as in all of them, but the low speed behavior, the modulation is better than in most of the others, but it still needs nearly full throttle to climb this step. Let's go to the highest speed and check this. It starts really immediately. Still have the noise. So probably the best so far, maybe the Atlas. I personally think the Atlas is quite okay, but many complain, I know. However, 1000 times better electronics than the Panda Hobby. SCX24 gone. And now to the Mini C 4x4 Suzuki. I don't know why. I love this truck. This one and the Atlas 6x6 are the ones I really probably like most. And it's on high speed, of course, now. And it also emits annoying noise, as you can hear now. But the low speed modulation is really superior to all others, in my opinion. Even better than in the XL. Of course, it's no crawler, But check this out, how nice it can modulate. So if there wouldn't be the noise, come on, there wouldn't be a need for upgrade in my opinion. I don't complain about the AAA batteries at all. I like those. You can give it to kids. Of course I use rechargeable batteries. Of course I have a ton for mini Cs. But highly recommended. But unfortunately super expensive. Nearly 250 euros here. And not perfect. Best modulation, low speed modulation in my opinion of all so far. Then the SCX24 and the Atlas wasn't bad either in my opinion. Mini C 4x4 Suzuki gone. And now let's come to the last two trucks, the by far most expensive ones. Only the Mini C is about in the same area. The 1/18 RC 4-wheel drive, the Bronco and the Defender. Those trucks, you won't believe it, are 280, 279 euros here. That's about 330, 20, 30, 40, whatever US dollar. And that's crazy because they do come by far with the worst electronics of all trucks I showed you now, I guess. This is a cheap toyish radio, and that's the newer version of the Defender, cheap toyish too. They are probably also turbo racing radios, the largest manufacturer in the world, and those are the lowest range radios. And in the Bronco, the 2S LiPo even doesn't have a balance plug, and if you want to switch it on off, you have to unscrew 4 screws to get the body off, or if you want to change the battery. And in the Defender, you at least can get through the on-off switch from outside, but in the Defender, if you want to change battery, you have to do this too, and you need 2 hex drivers, 1.5 and 2 millimeter. In the Bronco, at least only 1.5 millimeter. I did already. This one has a driver, and I painted the wheel. I will for sure upgrade those because driving performance is absolutely awful. Check this out. It doesn't make noise, that's okay, but low speed modulation, there is no low speed, and now you hear the noise too. There is no low speed modulation. So for a super expensive truck, you get 5 to 6 SG 1802 for one of those. Of course, the chassis is awesome. Bead locks, super tires, metal. I love them and I hate them. And the Defender isn't really better. The Defender does at least come with metal bumpers. The Bronco with plastic bumpers. I did already break one. And now to the Defender. It makes a lot of noise. And low speed modulation, I would say, is not here. There is no low speed modulation. So, absolutely awesome looking trucks, absolutely awesome chassis, but horrible electronics. Trucks costing only 4 times less than those to have better electronics. So RC 4-wheel drive 1/18 gone, and now to the test of the ESCs. So now let's test the ESCs, but first let me say some words about batteries for those micro trucks. I will test all ESCs on 2S LiPos or with 2S LiPos, and those which are capable I will also test on 3S. Therefore I made red JST connectors to all ESCs, so because I can easily swap from 2 to 3S with those, and I'm even thinking of using this tiny 3S LiPo in my SCX24 later, because placed very low, very small, and low in the chassis, but probably will improve center of gravity significantly. However, it's only 180 milliamp hours, so the stock SCX 22 LiPo does have 350 milliamp hours, so running time will decrease significantly. The original SCX 24 battery uses a JST PH 2.0 plug as power plug and a JST XH balance plug as normal as usual. 3-pin of course. And the Hobby Plus, Rock Hobby FMS 2S batteries, they are larger, they do have 600 milliamp hours, and they use a Molex plug, 2mm 2-pin, also called Losi plug in former times, and a normal JST XH 3-pin plug as balance plug. And RC 4-wheel drive and Panda Hobby, they use already the normal old, very old red JST plugs as power plugs. And I can really not understand why Axial and Hobby Plus use those types of connectors, so this and that one, for 2S LiPos. Before the SCX24 and the 2S Hobby Plus trucks had been released, those types of connectors have been only used, to my knowledge, in 1S LiPos, and actually they are still super popular in 1S FPV LiPo batteries for small quads. And since Axial belongs to Horizon now, I can even less understand why they use this JST PH plug, because they do use different plugs in their numerous small 2S models, planes, helicopters for a long time now. Those JST PH 2-pin plugs, they are also called MCPX plugs, or were called MCPX plugs in former times, because it was Horizon E-Flight who started the game with those connectors about 10 years ago with the Blade MCPX micro helicopter 1S. And I'm sure some of you guys still remember those 300 milliamp 1S LiPos from E-Flight, from the MCPX and other models. Super expensive and absolutely horrible quality. And so many other companies, for example, Hobby King with Eternity, took this type of batteries and those plugs in their programs. And I guess I must have bought nearly 100 of those batteries over the years. But then Horizon and E-Flight released other small models with 2S LiPo batteries. The first was, I guess, the Blade 130X micro helicopter, then the MCPX brushless helicopter, and the super cool UMX microplanes with brushless motors. And therefore they used a new plug system, again with JST PH 2.0 plugs, but not 2-pin, but with 3 pins. This is one of those super old LiPos, and so this plug is now used as power plug and as plug for balance charging. And I love this system. It works perfectly, and you can get many different types of charging boards meanwhile and cables to balance charge those LiPos. For example, those small para boards or this type. So this works perfectly. And there is no need for a special power plug in the SCX24 2S LiPo. I don't understand why they do this. You can also see it here. The wires used are 22 gauge for the power plug and for the balance plug. So in small LiPos, no need to use a special power plug if the wire to the balance plug is the same. And I really cannot understand why they did not use this awesome system in the SCX24 too. 22 gauge wires, 22 gauge wires, and it's the same in the Hobby Plus LiPo. 24 gauge wires, 24 gauge wires. So why a special power plug for this, and why using a power plug that's normally only used in 1S LiPos. Those Molex plugs of the Hobby Plus LiPos, they were used in the LoSi Micro T batteries about 10 years ago or whatever, but those were nickel metal hydride batteries, and then they were used in small 1S batteries. They are still used in their own 1S for the RGT 1-24 or for the CR24 batteries, so the same power plug, and they were used in 1S CP helicopters of 9 Eagles and in small helicopters from Valkera, only 1S. And if you would plug one of those 2S LiPos into a 1S device or a charger, this could cause serious problem. So with both, there are the 1S Molex LiPos out there, and there are many more 1S LiPos out there, 1S with those JST-PH plugs, and this only can cause problems. And for balance charging those 2S LiPos, you would have to make adapters. Didn't see some so far. Of course, you could use those old parallel charging cables for the Blade MCPX LiPos, and only plugging in the JST-PH 2-pin and 1, and then you have a red JST. There are many adapters for this, and using the balance plug for normal balancing, and this is power plug. However, I don't know why they didn't use the 3-pin version. That's so nice, and that's from Horizon Hobby Axial. So, and by the way, the USB charger coming with the Hobby Plus 2S LiPos and models, this one I didn't even open it, or didn't even open one so far. This USB charger doesn't even balance charge your LiPo. Maybe you can see it, there are only 2 pins, not 3 pins, so no balance charging, only charging without balancing. And the Axial, I also didn't open this charger so far, but the Axial USB charger coming with the SCX24, this does balance charge your LiPo. It does have 3 pins. But now let's start with the ESCs tests, and I will start with the Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 in the Axial SCX24. You can already see it, big wire mess, but I didn't want to cut all the wires. I simply used adapters. I won't use this large ESC in those micro models later. So let's start. As a reference, the Hobbywing 1080, 16 kHz PWM frequency settings, 2S on an SCX24 now. Quite a lot of punch, and starting behavior. You see it starts very soon. I only have to pull the trigger a little bit, and very smooth. And very smooth start. I can go extremely slow, and I can climb this step. Really slow. And I can climb slow. Warm gear in the SX24, so it stops. And now let's switch to 3S. Hobbywing 1080 on 3S. Still very smooth starting behavior, but maybe not as smooth as on 2S. but a lot more punch. And now on the Hobby Plus chassis. Now Hobbywing 1080 on the Hobby Plus chassis on 2S. Also quite a lot of punch. And starts extremely smooth. Climbs nicely. Has the same problem as the XL here. And climbs easily, but does not have a warm gear, so drag brake is not that strong. And now the same on 3S. Hobbywing 1080 on the Hobby Plus chassis on 3S. Extremely powerful now. Startup behavior still smooth, but would be nice on 2S. And no noise at all. The most important thing, 16 kHz WPM frequency, so you will not hear any whining of the ESC if I only pull the trigger with the Hobbywing 1080. Okay, and now let's test this super popular and super cheap red China ESC on the XL SCX24. Now the China cheapo, the red one, 2S SCX24. So I even do not punch. I try to start smoothly, but it's impossible to start smoothly. So that's all I can do. Very bad low speed control, but noise is awesome. I don't hear any whining of the ESC. So that's quite okay, but low speed modulation, very poor. And now let's test this red ESC in the Hobby Plus. Red China ESC in the Hobby Plus 2S. And it's impossible to start smoothly. So not a crawler ESC, but what's really positive, no noise. Remember the noise of the stock trucks. But no crawler ESC. And now let's test the blue China ESC, the cheapo, in the SCX24. Blue China ESC 2S on the SCX24. Try to start as smooth as possible, and it's not possible. Can you hear the noise? Not smooth at all, and annoying noise too, so no crawler ESC. It only runs on 2S. And now let's test the blue China ESC on the Hobby Plus. The blue China ESC on the Hobby Plus on 2S. Absolutely no speed, low speed control, no modulation, and whining. And now let's check the Orlandoo ESC on the XL SCX24. The Orlandoo ESC on the SCX24, 2S, only runs on 2S. And you see start slowly is nearly impossible. And whining a little bit, but not that bad. Unfortunately, very bad low speed modulation. Otherwise this would be a nice ESC with light controller. And now let's test the Orlandoo ESC in the Hobby Plus. Orlandoo ESC in the Hobby Plus CR18 2S. Nearly impossible to start smoothly. Really bad low speed modulation, unfortunately. But there's no whining actually. But not a crawler ESC. And now let's pick the next ESC. Let's test the Dumbo RC ESC in the SCX24. Now the Dumbo RC super cheap receiver on the SCX24 on 2S. A little bit of whining, but quite nice low speed modulation. Unfortunately, you can hear the whining. It can also bash, but low speed modulation is not that bad in this super cheap ESC with light controller. But the whining is quite annoying. I can climb slowly. Loud, but really quite nice low speed modulation. And now let's test the Dumbo RC on 3S on the SCX24. This ESC also can work with 3S. Dumbo RC ESC on the SCX24 on 3S. It can bash, but it still does have quite nice low speed modulation. Unfortunately, it's loud. And now let's test the Dumbo RC on the Hobby Plus. Dumbo RC ESC on the Hobby Plus CR18 on 2S. Unfortunately whining again, but really quite nice modulation. Not that bad at all. If the whining wouldn't be, I can stop it. And now let's test the Dumbo RC on 3S. Dumbo RC 3S CR24. Quite a lot of power. Whining, but modulation still not that bad. Better run it on 2S, but so far the best. If it wouldn't be that loud, it would be really nice. And now let's test the Turbo Racing ESC on the SCX24. And now the Turbo Racing TP60025 on the XL SCX24. Unfortunately, really bad low speed modulation and also a little bit of noise. You hear the noise? And low speed modulation is not good. It's not as bad as in the red and the blue China ESC, but since this ESC is sold as crawler ESC, I'm quite disappointed now. So let's test the Turbo Racing ESC in the Hobby Plus CR18 now. And now the Turbo Racing TP60025 in the CR18. Unfortunately, bad low speed modulation, but it seems to be not as noisy as in the SCX24. However, very bad low speed modulation. Disappointment. It runs only on 2S or on 1S. And now let's check the famous Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 on 2S on the XL SCX24. And now the Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 on 2S on the SCX24. It is said to be a super good ESC. Load speed modulation is it's okay, it's quite okay. But this ESC, you can see it here, has a big disadvantage. It doesn't have a crawler mode, so you cannot switch off brake, so you can't go directly from forward to reverse. That's a big disadvantage, so that's not really a crawler ESC. And you can hear it also makes quite a lot of noise. So low speed modulation quite okay, but that Dumbo RC costs 4 times less and does have a crawler mode and does also make noise and has quite a nice low speed modulation. So it's really hard to, because no crawler mode, so it's really hard on the inclines and on the steps. Okay, let's test it on 3S2 because it's 3S capable. Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 on 3S. So it's a basher without crawler mode. Low speed modulation is still not that bad, but this ESC is not a crawler ESC because you cannot switch off the brake function. Quite a lot of punch and low speed modulation is quite okay, but you hear the noise it makes. So let's test it in the Hobby Plus CR18-2, Hobbywing Quicrun 1625, 2S on the CR18. Quite nice low speed control, a lot of noise. And brake function you can't switch off, so not an ESC for a crawler. Noisy, but otherwise for a basher probably quite a nice ESC, but not super cheap too. So let's test it on 3S2. Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 on the CR18 on 3S. Probably a nice basher ESC. Still quite nice. Low speed behavior and loud and brake. So not the ESC to choose for a microcrawler, however quite nice modulation as the Dumbo RC ESC. Noisy and brake. And now let's test the AS12-6RW on the SCX24. This ESC doesn't have a BEC, so additional BEC mounted. And now the AS12-6RW ESC from Germany, from Modellbauregler DE on the SCX24 on 2S. Wow. Check this out. Unbelievable. Wow. Can you hear anything? No. Absolutely silent. Because it's on 18 kHz WPM frequency. But can you believe this low? It also can bash, of course. But can you believe this low speed modulation? This is far superior to the Hobbywing 1080. Wow, wow. Wow. And this tiny ESC also runs on 3S, so let's test it on 3S on the SEX24 too. And now the AS12-6RW ESC on 3S on the SEX24. It's unbelievable. Even on 3S, absolutely stunning low speed modulation. I can stop here. It's absolutely awesome. And now let's test this awesome ESC on the Hobby Plus CR18. And now the AS12-6RW ESC on the Hobby Plus CR18 on 2S. That's absolutely awesome. Unbelievable in my opinion. And now let's test this ESC also on 3S on the CR18. AS12-6RW ESC 3S on the Hobby Plus CR18. Also on 3S. Absolutely stunning low speed modulation. Unbelievable, and absolutely no noise. Far superior to the Hobbywing Quicrun 1080. And even on 3S, low speed modulation, unbelievable. This ESC is wow. And now finally, let's test the AS12-15RW BEC ESC, also from Germany, from Modellbauregler.de, first on 2S on the SEX24. And now the AS12-15RW BEC ESC on 2S on the XL SEX24. Absolutely silent, no whining at all, and absolutely stunning low speed modulation. This is unbelievable, the same performance as its smaller brother, and this is really far superior to even to the 1080. I can stop on the edge. I can go even backwards without touching the ground. It's unbelievable. Okay. And now let's check it on 3S on the SCX24. And now the AC12-15RW BEC on 3S on the SCX24. Even on 3S, absolutely stunning low speed modulation. I can stop on the edge. Absolutely awesome. Wow. And now let's test this awesome ESC also in the Hobby Plus CR18. And now the AS12-15RW BEC on 2S on the Hobby Plus CR18. That's my bad driving. Should trim the servo. Check this out. Check this out. Even with the CR18, which does not have warm gears, as the SCX24, I can stop on the edge. Absolutely stunning. Awesome, awesome, really awesome. I hope you do believe what you see here. And finally, let's test this ESC also on 3S on the CR18 now. And now the AS12-15RW BEC 3S Hobby Plus CR18. Still absolutely stunning low speed modulation even on 3S. Now it even stops, only with brake. So this was the last ESC in my tests here now, and I hope you liked what you saw in the end. I only can say wow, wow, wow to the ESCs of the German company Modellbauregler.de. Okay guys, you saw this awesome driving performance now of those ESCs, and the poor driving performance of other ESCs too. However, there are people who say driving performance is also extremely dependent on the radio, and they complain, for example, in the rock hobby, wheel is cheap 1 to 6, and say the stock radio, those types of radios that come with those models, are not good enough to give good driving performance. And now I made all my tests with my FlySky Noble, what's quite an okay radio. I don't use it so often. I mostly use my super old FlySky GT3C or also Dumbo RC radios, and I use a lot of those super cheap stock radios that come with all those models. Maybe you've seen my video now. There are new radios now which have model memory and bind to all those 3-in-1 units, and those are the radios that come with the trucks I've shown to you. Those with the knobs come with the tiny RGTs and also with the 1-76 turbo racing car, and those with the buttons, that's a rock hobby, that's from the Katana, and that's probably from the CR18 or a CR24. I don't know, I have a ton of those radios, far too many, and I really like them. And I will show you now that it's not necessary to buy a super duper expensive radio, Futaba, Sanwa or whatever, to get good driving performance with those. I did already show you that those cheap 4-channel receivers, Turbo Racing or whatever, Hobby Plus, Hobby Porter, they are sold under different names, but they are Turbo Racing, bind with all those radios that come with those Hobby Plus, Rock Hobby, FMS models. And now I have one of those receivers here in the SCX24. I do have the tiny AS12-6RW ESC in the SCX24 and use this super cheap radio. And same awesome performance. Of course, I wouldn't say the Noble isn't the better radio and you have better feeling, far more adjustments, and probably range is much better and speed is better, but for a tiny crawler, you do not need to buy super expensive radio. If you have one of those trucks which come with those radios, buy this super cheap receiver, buy a better ESC, and you simply have to buy one of those. They are about below 10 bucks, 8 bucks or whatever, waterproof, 4 channels. You have a third channel here on the radio which you can use then for light control, and you will be good with this super cheap, some say toyish radio. I think they are quite nice, maybe mainly for indoors. You can also buy them in blue and yellow and white, and women like them. They are good for kids, they are small, and you will get awesome driving performance. But the SCX24 doesn't come with such a radio. With your Rock Hobby Katana, with your Atlas 6x6, with your CR18, CR24, whatever. So let's talk about those ESCs and their performance a little bit. We do not have to talk about the Hobbywing Quicrun 1080. Awesome performance, program card, a lot of program options. I uploaded a video recently where I explained this and all the options in detail. It's for sure an awesome ESC, but not meant for tiny microcrawlers, and for sure there will be more of those large brushed ESCs which perform perfectly in those microcrawlers too, but they are large and heavy and so not ideal. Also cheap ones, for example this Hobby King XK45, you can decase it, but we don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about the performance of the tiny ESCs I tested here. Those were 8 different models of brushed micro ESCs, and I really would be interested if there are more models out there. I didn't really find a lot. You get a ton of different of those super cheap China ESCs in blue, red and yellow. It's different to say which is which and if all those are the same. And then there is the German company CTI with their quite popular Thor ESCs, brushed micro ESCs, which are said to be quite good, but also quite pricey. However, a buddy from German rock crawler forum told me he compared those to the AS ESCs, and the AS ESCs from Modellbauregler.de were significantly better in performance and not more silent than the Thor ESCs. The Thor was more like the Hobbywing Quicrun 1625. And this guy, his nickname is RC Friend, was the guy who showed those ESCs, those absolutely awesome ESCs to me in the forum, who told he tested one, bought one, tested one and was absolutely stunned, and that's why I bought those. So we have to say thanks to RC Freund from rockcrawler.de. Otherwise, if he wouldn't have mentioned those ESCs in the Rock Hobby Katana thread, I wouldn't have bought them. I don't know which other small ESCs are out there. I searched the internet. Probably there should be some of Reedy in the United States, and maybe there's a small Castle Creations ESC out for brushed motors, but I didn't really find any results. So let's compare all those ESCs. Similarities and differences. 3 of those are waterproof. That's the Turbo Racing ESC, the Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 and the Dumbo RC ESC. All the others are not waterproof, but of course you can make all those waterproof by coating. I use this spray if I want to do it. You can also use brush. There are a lot of compounds out there to waterproof PCBs. And there are 3 or 4 ESCs under those which do not have an on-off switch. That's the Orlandoo ESC, but you can solder an on-off switch to this ESC, and the Dumbo RC ESC and the 2 German AS ESCs, they do not have an on-off switch. And there's not a really good solution for this, because you cannot use one of those tiny on-off switches between battery and ESC, because those are only rated for maximum 1 amp, as I did it here in my Orlandoo Rock Bouncer, but those motors, they draw far less than 1 amp, so here it's no problem. But in the 1 to 24th, 1 to 18th, you cannot use those switches, and larger switches rated up to 10 amps, they are normally super bulky, so you have to plug on and off the battery as we are used to in helicopters or planes or whatever. And the performance of the ESCs, for sure, the worst was the blue China ESC. Noise and absolutely awful low speed performance, modulation. The red one, I don't know which one it is exactly. I have a ton of those. You get them in a bag. You can buy them 20 amps, 30 amps with, without brake. Here you can switch brake on, off. Nobody knows what is what. You get them for a few bucks, but as ESCs for small crawlers, they are not so good. You saw the performance, low speed modulation was awful too. However, at least it didn't make such a lot of noise as the blue one. The Orlandoo ESC was a disappointment too, but for Orlandoo's it's quite nice. It does have light controller if you want 5 amps, so it would be suitable for smaller crawlers too, and you do have a light controller you can plug in, but do not have to a low voltage servo. But the performance was really quite bad and it was loud. But in Orlando's with their gear motors, that's not so important. However, for our crawlers here, that's not the solution. What was nearly the biggest disappointment for me, this was this Turbo Racing TP60025 for Hobby Plus ESC. It's rated 25 amps, and this is the only ESC amongst those which can also be used with 1S LiPos. So you can use it for the 1 to 24th that run on 1S. You can switch different modes, so you have a crawler mode and a brake mode and a boat mode, and you can switch between nickel metal hydride and LiPo batteries. However, the performance unfortunately was really poor. I do have quite a couple of those because I thought they would be really nice. But if you are on performance, that's not the way to go, unfortunately. And the Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 performed as it was supposed to perform. It had really quite nice low speed performance, and it's a good ESC, but it's also rather pricey. It's by far the most expensive ones of all those I meant up to now. It's here in my country 20 to 25 euros in shops, or even nearly 30 sometimes. On the net you get it for a little bit less than 20 euros or maybe 20 US dollars. But it has a big disadvantage. You cannot switch off the brake, so it's really not good for a crawler. Performance then is not ideal. And then we come to the Dumbo RC ESC, and that's my second winner. I love this ESC. This ESC is about $5. It's unbelievable. It has a plane, a crawler and a brake mode, and it has a third channel. You can use it for switching on off lights. That's the ESC I use in my Orlandoo rock bouncer. Maybe you've seen the video. You can switch on off lights, and it also has a low voltage buzzer. I also use it in my Orlandoo rock bouncer. So if you want to know more about this ESC, check the Orlandoo video, or I did already make a review video of this ESC 1 or 2 years ago. It's only $5. That's unbelievable. But unfortunately it seems to be discontinued. I don't know. I give the links and the specifications of all those ESCs in the description. If the link to the Dumbo RC ESC will not work anymore, then search it on AliExpress or on eBay. Maybe you will get some there. This ESC is only $5 and it's perfect. It also has really good modulation, low speed performance. The only downside, it's quite noisy, but if you want to upgrade your tiny crawler for $5 with a better ESC, better modulation, and easily making switchable lights, then buy this ESC. Highly recommended for $5. And finally we come to the clear winner of these tests, of my tests. And this is first the absolutely awesome Modellbauregler.de AS12-6RW ESC. You get this ESC that way, without wires and without BEC. You get them simply in a plastic bag. Modellbauregler.de is a very small German company, and you get it with instructions, but in German, and you can buy it with or without wires for the receiver. I bought the version without wires, and it's about 20 euro, 19.95 or something for one, and if you buy a pack of 6, it's 99 euros, so 20 euros about, I guess about 24, 25 US dollars now, and 100 euros is 130 or what. But the disadvantage of the small ESC, of this small ESC, it doesn't have a BEC, so you will have to buy a BEC and solder a BEC either to the ESC or connect it in parallel to the ESC with the battery. But those BECs or voltage regulators or UBECs, they are out there everywhere for super cheap. You get them for maybe $2 or whatever, 2, 3, $1 everywhere on Amazon, Ali, eBay. And those types, which do already come with wires, are also easy to use. You have an in and out. You have to search for a BEC or UBEC or voltage regulator which has a out of 5 volts. I guess there are no with 6 volts. I didn't find any, but there are others with 3.3 volts and 9 volts. So in this AS12 I used the larger BEC only to show, and I used the stock wires of the BEC. They are not very flexible, so I simply soldered it in parallel to the battery plug. And in this AS12, that's the one I used in the test, I used a much smaller BEC. I used this BEC, drop down, step down, however, and I soldered it near. I also soldered it with wires to the battery wires that come to the ESC and used a little bit of shrink tube, and that's the way that saves more room. However, it's not really difficult to do. And a lot of people will complain now, 20 euros, 23, 24 US dollars, that's quite a lot of money for a small ESC. All the other ESCs here, but the Hobbywing Quicrun 1625 and of course the 1080 are far cheaper, that's true. But on the other hand, check how much people spend for upgrading for brass in their SCX24 or their other crawlers, for tires. Only that's the SCX24, the RC 4-wheel drive tires and the beadlock wheels of this SCX24 are far more expensive for the price of the tires, and the rims of this SCX24 you get 2 of those. And the BEC, that's not a factor of cost, you will get it for, I don't know, those ones I guess I paid $2 or $3 for 3, so don't have to buy those ones. You find 1000 different types, and all of those I bought so far work fine, and an output of 1 ampere is far enough for those tiny crawlers. The stock electronics also do only have 1 amp or even less most. So the small AS12-6RW ESC is for sure the first winner, and this ESC does not have to be calibrated to the radio you use. And then we come to the second winner, the at least as awesome but larger AS12-15RW, and that's not the easy version. You can buy this version I used here, and I bought several of those so far, and there is also a AS12-15RW BEC ESC version. Both have a BEC out with 1 amp, that's totally sufficient. Both are able to work with 2 to 3 S lipos, the small one too, but the easy version I do not have does have auto calibration to your radio, and this version, same price, you have to calibrate to your radio when you use it first, as you are used to with full throttle and full reverse throttle. That's quite easy and no problem. Calibration will be confirmed by a LED, and you can also program this ESC to only 50% reverse throttle. And the performance was absolutely stunning too. So the big difference is the AS12-15 does have 15 ampere constant and 20 ampere peak. So you can also use it in little larger models, and the AS12-6RW ESC does have only a rating of 6 ampere constant, but 10 ampere peak, so that should be easily sufficient for all the trucks I showed you before. Maybe in the Panda Hobby, but it has have 10 amps peak. The Panda Hobby drew 8 amps peak when it has been tortured extremely. So maybe even for the Panda Hobby, but for sure suitable for all the other trucks I showed you. And the performance of both of those was so stunning, unbelievable, at least on par with the Hobbywing 1080, if not even better. Check the videos again. And yeah, such a tiny ESC is for sure a huge advantage to the large Hobbywing 1080 or other large ESCs people use. Some use take-in ESCs in their microcrawlers. So I am absolutely excited about those ESCs. There is also a third version. It's a kit, you have to build it yourself. It's only 5 amp rated, but does have a 1 amp BEC, and I ordered 2 of those kits. You have to solder all the parts, the SMD parts, to the board and make your own micro ESC. And maybe if you want, I will show it in a later video. However, thanks again to RC Freund from Rockcrawler.de forum for showing those ESCs to me some month ago, and also reporting their performance, and that their performance is much better than the performance of the CTI Thor ESCs. I will give descriptions and links to all those ESCs, mainly to the German ones, because maybe some of you are interested and it's not so easy to find, and the homepage is in German, and then you can check their specifications and check it out. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked what you saw. I really liked it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. I'll be back.